books transformed, where me and my good friend Brian over there like to sit in little tiny bubbles and talk about streaming shows and movies that are based on comic books. We've been talking about Terminator Zero for a couple of weeks now because we like to talk about streaming shows and take them apart episode by episode or every 2 episodes or so versus doing a whole big dump. I mean, well, Brian, hopefully, I don't know if you've done a whole big dump today or not, but
yeah, several. I'm a little under
nice. So, if you're watching us on YouTube, it looks so weird. I'm having some issues with my streaming services right now, but hopefully by our next recording, we'll be back to normal. But right now, we just got a black screen and we're in little bubbles. If you're listening as a podcast, thank you so much for listening. We love you guys listening and watching anytime you can. So, Brian, I'm rambling a lot. Did you like the last 2 episodes of Terminator Zero?
I did. I'm still very excited to see what happens here. As I said the last time, I wasn't expecting Judgment Day to necessarily happen in the show. I thought it would be resolved somehow, and it I guess it was stopped. But from there, I really didn't know what to expect.
Yeah. Were you satisfied with the way that it was stopped? Because I felt like in episode 4, they show all these nukes getting launched. They're all like flying up into space and then flying down to Earth. Do you feel like the fact that Kokoro stopped that, do you think that sort of stretches the believability?
Well, what actually did happen? Did she just launch like another missile to blow those up in the stratosphere or something like that? Is that how you perceived it?
Honestly, I don't really understand it. They show the missiles going towards the Earth, and then she just kind of says, I stopped it. They don't really like show something happening.
Huh. I wonder if that also potentially means that like she just stopped it around Japan and not anywhere else.
Right. I did think that too, of like, did the whole rest of the world get nuked, but Japan is still okay? I don't know.
Yeah, and also to go back to T2, Skynet launched nukes on Russia, and then Russia retaliated against the U.S. So that was the first nuclear attack. So I assume that it just meant that she stopped the nukes from hitting Russia.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, I mean, your guess is as good as mine. To me, I felt like it was too much of a cliffhanger, and then like when it got resolved, it was like, okay, well, what did you actually do? Because it seems like it'd be impossible to stop that.
Yeah, but this is also, artificial intelligence and all that. And they've been kind of building up that this thing has the potential to stop it. They said, yes, I can stop it. Maybe they still will explain why, maybe not. Maybe we don't need to know. I can accept that sometimes, and sometimes you don't exactly need to know how. It's just that it can happen, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point, because these 2 episodes are still very fucking entertaining. It's funny, like doing this show with you, sometimes I wonder, are we just sort of like just paraphrasing what happens? Are we actually explaining like this is good or not? I think that we do a pretty good job of saying like, this is why this is good. This is why this is not so interesting. For this show, I think overall in general, if I was to rank this show, I would give every episode like an 8.5 at least, or a 9. Maybe even one of them would have gotten a 10 at this point. Just because I think that the quality has been consistent for every episode, and there has not been any sort of glaring thing where I'm like, oh, I don't like that. Do you have anything like that for this show?
No, and that's something that usually happens with most of the Terminator movies, honestly, like post 1 and 2. There's usually something really glaringly wrong about it that you just don't like, that ruins it. I don't want to say ruins it. I mean, I don't want to say, I guess, I don't know. What would you say is the worst movie? Genesis?
Yeah, I'd say Genesis is the worst one.
Yeah. Like, I feel like it's been a while since I've watched that, but I could probably say there's a bunch of things that really annoyed me about that.
Right. Well, I think one thing that every single Terminator past Terminator 2 suffers from is action sequences that go on too long and they're like too over the top. And this show does not have that at all.
No, it does not. It's very, very, well, it's hard to say grounded because, there are robots walking around in 1997, but,
right.
it is a bit more, a little less fantastical with, random events.
Mm-hmm. I think the only thing that kind of stretches it besides this nuke discussion we're having here is the amount of abuse that Aiko has taken, but there's enough time where she's able to kind of recover between each episode, where it's like, okay, well, she did just get like pummeled by a Terminator. She's been shot in the leg. She has been helped by like doctors and stuff by this episode. So I'll even let that stretch.
Yeah. And like you said, I'm not ruling out, especially now that one of the things that we found out here is that essentially Aiko and the Terminator have the same mission.
Yes.
So who's to say that she's not also a Terminator, you know?
Agreed. Yeah, especially when we see stuff with Mizaki later. We'll get into that too. But so let's get on the same page about what the Terminator and Aiko's mission is. So how do you interpret what Aiko's mission is?
That they were to stop Kokoro from coming online because Kokoro becomes a greater threat in the future. Yeah.
Kokoro and it seems like with this show that Kokoro and Skynet kind of form a union, and like she wants to stop.
I don't think so, actually.
Oh, okay.
I think there's three sides.
Go tell me the three.
Well, Kokoro is one, and then Skynet, and then humanity. And now, I guess the big thing, I don't remember which episode happened, and this is probably just the last thing that happens in the episode too, episode 6, where Kokoro basically says that now humanity is her weapon, that she was created as a weapon for humanity, but now she's going to use humanity as a weapon against Skynet. So to me, it's three different sides here, all, and no one's really completely aligned with the other. You know, I feel like the enemy of my enemy is my friend does not really apply here.
Yeah. The enemy of my enemy is just going to obliterate me too.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. No, it's really interesting stuff, and I can't believe that I didn't make a fucking clicker across the bottom for this really great sequence that's at the beginning of episode 6, where the prophet woman has a little scene with Aiko, and she uses that stick they use to like light candles to show timelines. I love that fucking scene so much.
Yeah, that was because we were talking about timelines and how that all works, and I really liked that they decided to explain it. And how they explained it was basically like, we're sending you back to do this, but essentially that's just creating another branch of time here. So whatever happens here, this timeline, you can't do shit about, which is really really a horrible thing to think about, you know?
Yeah, it's really nihilistic and hopeless, which goes along with the way the show has been every episode.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen 12 Monkeys?
I have not.
Oh, fuck. All right. Okay. This is a little bit of a spoiler. And also one thing I want to preface it with is that like 12 Monkeys is actually a movie that for a long time I considered to be like in my top 5 favorite movies, right?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. This is a bit of a spoiler, but it's like very, very early on in the movie. There's a virus that wipes out the majority of humanity. Everyone's living underground in these like sealed in communities, and they're going to send Bruce Willis back in time. But they're going to send him back in time not so that he can stop the virus from being spread, because they can't do that. They know that their time travel is not going to be able to make him prevent the virus from spreading. What they're going to do instead is they're going to get some information or get like something that's going to help them make a cure in the future so that they can go back to the surface.
Okay. So it's not like how they handled the legacy virus in X-Men 90, well, the original X-Men animated series.
Right. No, and it's not like a lot of time travel things. I think that like at a certain point, people that made time travel movies are like, we can't go back in time and change the past. We can't prevent the present from happening, but we can like make a new timeline, or we can take something from the past to make our present better. I think like the most modern example of that and the most famous example is Avengers Endgame, where it's not like they're going to go back in time and stop Thanos from doing the snap. They're going to get the Infinity Stones from the past and bring the people back in the present.
Yes, they're going to correct things that happened without erasing them, and they really use that really fantastic example of that Tony had a kid, and that, you know, how do you justify people that were born then, you know?
Yeah. So I guess my question to you is, if they're not going to go back in time and prevent Judgment Day, if like their present is the way that it is, why are the humans sending people back in time?
Just so it's a great question. Just so somebody else doesn't have to go through what they had to, I guess.
That's kind of the way I saw it. Yeah.
And really, is that the answer to save humanity? Is that selfless act? Like they went through all this trouble to get this information, to send someone back that was not going to help them in any way.
Yeah.
But to help someone else that they will never meet.
Yeah, and that's super noble, and I think that is what Mattson Tomlin is going on with this story. I think that is going to be like the main idea of the story. A while ago, I had this idea. I was like, how could you make like a new Terminator movie and make it exciting and compelling? And you know me, I always kind of come up with these weird, convoluted ideas. I can sum it up very quickly, though, so I don't bore anybody. But I was thinking, like, what if at some point we did see that there's multiple timelines and different things happen every time you send a Terminator back. But just like this show, every time they send a Terminator back, they make a new timeline. And what if like Skynet kind of has an awareness of all these different timelines? And could we do some kind of fun thing with that where it's like there's some kind of, I don't know, ultimate Skynet that's just basically sending people back to see how they can restructure the future so they can make like their own special timeline. I don't know.
Well, isn't there always? I don't know if we talked about this, and it was probably even you that mentioned it, but the initial idea of how to get around the paradox of, Kyle Reese fathering John Connor was that I think you did say this, that Skynet basically did win, and they felt bad about eradicating humanity. So they sent someone back to give them a fighting chance or to keep them around somehow. So they engineered events to not have humanity get completely destroyed.
Oh.
By saying, something like that. Like that was, it might have even been.
It wasn't me. I kind of wish I said that.
Okay. Maybe I read that somewhere when I was looking stuff up. It might have even been from Jim Cameron. I don't remember.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's interesting in this show is that they say I think it's in episode 5, because I think that's when Aiko says all this stuff about time travel to the daughter. And they say resistance leaders, or maybe Kokoro says it to Malcolm, but like they say resistance leaders as in plural. And it's not just John Connor that they're implying. They're implying that Skynet sent them back to get other resistance leaders.
Okay.
So I mean, okay, you can take that. I'm sorry for cutting you off, but like you can take that in 2 ways. In Terminator 3, the Terminator comes back and kills multiple people in the past that are part of John Connor's like team. So you could say that they are resistance leaders, or you could say that like there's multiple John Connors on Earth. It's not. He's just like maybe the American version of the resistance, and they try to take out the Chinese and the Japanese.
But would that be just a complete rehash of the story in a different setting, and that? Would that be worthwhile or not? And while I really like the idea of their, you mentioned before about having this Skynet that it can see multiple timelines and is aware of all these different things there, I think people are burned out on timelines and
yes they are. Yes,
and they don't want super confusing shit. They like, I don't even think it matters that the people watching like the first 2 Terminators that how it kind of doesn't work like that, Like time travel doesn't exist, and it can't work like that if it did.
Right.
Like they just wanted an interesting story that's not too stupid, but not too difficult to understand either.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because like we're called Comic Books Transformed, and so we're obviously going to talk about some comic book stuff. Like you had the idea of the multiverse going back to like the first issue that had the Flash meeting Jay Garrick, right? So the multiverse has been around for like a really long time in comics. Like I don't even know if that's like the 60s or 70s, but then 80s you have Crisis on Infinite Earths where there's multiple realities, right? Multiple Earths. But the idea of like a multiverse and stuff, you see it in that show Sliders, then it starts to really become big when they have the idea of like actors from different movie franchises combining now, and especially with Marvel. So I think like the idea of like the multiverse being so exciting, and even like with Fringe and stuff, like you're talking like maybe like early to mid 2000s to now, where the multiverse has been like in everything. But back in like Terminator 1, Terminator 2 time. We're talking like Back to the Future type logic where like you can go back and change the past and make the present better.
I just want to say that I loved Sliders and I loved Fringe.
I knew it. Yeah.
Sliders was one of the first TV shows like I watched, as I got like an older teen, I guess.
Yeah.
That Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And then I loved Fringe so much. And it unfortunately went downhill a little bit towards the end, I think. So did Sliders, actually.
Right. I need to watch more of it. But even like if you look at X-Men Days of Future Past, that's not like a new timeline necessarily that they're talking about there, even though like the sequels kind of deal with the idea of like an alternate timeline. But X-Men Days of Future Past, they send Wolverine back in time, and it does save their present.
Yeah, he comes back to a different reality version of his reality, which is interesting.
Yeah, right, and I think that's where the future movies come from.
Yeah.
But regardless, your point is very, very valid. It's something that we should always talk about on this show. How like I think the general public is kind of just fed up with multiple timelines.
Yeah, I think you could still do time travel. I think it's still an interesting idea, but I think it's got to be kept a little more basic. Also, the franchise has had a rough time evolving without Arnold Schwarzenegger. And again, we keep referencing that I have not seen Dark Fate, so I don't know how much he's in it. But, Genesis was definitely a letdown, a low point. I actually like Salvation a lot.
Yeah.
But some people didn't. And I think you'd have to go somewhere along that route to get something new, potentially. But again, have not seen Dark Fate, so I really got to get on that. It is on some service. I did check.
Yeah, right after you watch 12 Monkeys, you can watch that.
Yeah, I was trying to type it in to see what was on right now, but my app's not working. So
yeah. So then let's bring it back to like the present day on the show. So the present day, you have these people broken into different groups. There's Aiko and the daughter. I can't remember the daughter's name. Do you remember the daughter's name? Rika. Thank you so much. Then you have the two sons. I know one of them is Kenta
and Hiro.
Kenta and Hiro. Okay, thank you. And then there is Mizaki, who's with them, and then Malcolm is just kind of like in his lab with Kokoro. And then we have the Terminator as well. But
can I briefly say I love how Malcolm says Kokoro?
Yes. You can briefly say that because I think that's fucking great. Yeah. So deep, so dramatic. I love it. But we have these great sequences with Misaki. And the beginning of it, the way it starts off is that Hiro feels like she's still the same woman. She cares about them. She would have killed them if she was a robot, like a Terminator. And Kenta's like, no. She's been programmed to be like that.
Yeah. It's an extension of how Kenta's seen kind of cold towards machinery. He wanted to tear apart the cat. He just doesn't see sees these machines as people.
Yeah. And then she gets to show that machine side when she finally gets activated in episode 5, right? That was so fucking awesome.
That was crazy. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah. Because, I mean, we've talked about this, that the maker of the show is the guy that made Bleach. And I actually really want to go back and watch Bleach again because I just love, like, the way that she looks and the way that she moves. It's such like a crisp kind of like sleek anime kind of movement. And it's just so cool. Look at what she just brutally murders, like, 4 people.
Yeah.
But you see, and that's like a little stupid nitpicky thing, like because there's that one part when the Terminator's punching Aiko, and I keep going back to that part. He's just punching her, and he's really messing her up. But at one point, Mizaki like just goes like this and headbutts a guy, and just like smashes the back of his head with her head, and he's just dead.
You know what though? I think that it's a matter of I can actually believe that in a way. I think your head is a lot harder than an arm is. And think about it. If you're hitting someone like this against the back, you don't have a lot of leverage there, and you're hitting something that's very it's a lot bigger of a target. So it's all the power is getting distributed there. I can kind of see that. I feel like that's something you see in wrestling. You see someone hit someone over the back, and it looks like it's like this big powerful move, and it really just doesn't feel like anything.
Yes. No, that's a good point. Yeah, and I mean that's just a stupid nitpicky thing. I don't even want to like mess up our show with that. But like, you know, she takes out these guys. Then there's this really tense sequence where Kenta is holding a gun at her, and then the brother Hero jumps on him and starts beating him up too.
Yeah,
so
that was great.
Yeah. The kids really get to shine in episode 5. Like they show that maybe they know more or are a little bit wiser than the adults think they are, and they kind of help move the plot forward in episode 5.
Yes, I agree. And it's also nice to see child characters that aren't annoying. I feel like a lot of times we see that and you're just like, oh, another kid character or whatever. But it totally works. I'm invested in them.
Yeah.
I'm already thinking like, is this like a one and done thing? Could there be multiple seasons, sort of?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be curious to see what these kids grow up into, you know, in the future.
Do you know if it's going to be a one and done thing or?
I don't.
Okay.
Very curious.
Okay. Yeah, I'm loving it. I would love for it to keep going, but I mean, I guess it depends on how it's going to get resolved in the next 2 episodes. So they all basically eventually converge onto Cat Town. And when they get to Cat Town, the Terminator shows up, but the Terminator's had a little bit of an upgrade, hasn't he?
Yes. So we kind of have to talk about the Inos going around first. And that's kind of how we got into the scene with Misaki attacking those humans. But Kokoro has taken control of the Inos, and she's corralling up the humans and killing anybody that resists. So to avoid detection, because the Terminator looks like a human, it takes one of their heads and like attaches it to his shoulder, which is crazy, but it's kind of awesome at the same time.
Right.
He's got this lump in his shoulder.
Right.
Like the guy, the Ino looks at him and he's just like flashing the head, and it's like, you're cool. It seems sort of like weird and dumb, but I loved it.
Yep. Yeah, visually, it's just super interesting and fun.
Yeah, and it's just shows that you know, this Terminator is innovative. You know, it's like not just some dumb killing machine. You know, it's like it's intelligent.
Yeah, I love it, and I love when it is taking the Ino apart, and then it's basically like augmenting itself with the Ino. It takes like a razor blade and cuts open the roof of its mouth. Gross, and like just makes you shudder thinking about that feeling. But then it like plugs. Go ahead.
I had a visceral reaction to that, seeing that.
How could you not? You know, and it like plugs the, I don't know, like some sort of like cable or whatever into its own top of its mouth.
Yeah,
you know, but still that allows it to talk, and we'll explain how that comes into the plot later. But so it's hunting them down in Cat Town. They all kind of converge into Cat Town, and it's funny, like. Wasn't that funny when Aika sees the gun at the game in Cat Town, and then she like pulls it up, and it's like she's using it as if she thinks it's going to be a real gun?
Yeah. I was a little surprised. Like, what are you grabbing that thing for?
Right.
Shoot it at the Terminator, I guess, for a second to throw him, make him think it's a real gun, but
yeah,
really anything.
Well, she shoots it, but then you realize she's shooting at she doesn't know it. She's shooting at Misaki. She thinks it's the Terminator.
Oh, that's right.
But it's
Misaki.
Right. Yeah. So, anyway, Aika and the daughter and the one son are all together at the end, but Kenta ends up getting kidnapped because the Terminator does the old Wolfie's just fine trick.
Yes.
So, you want to just explain what the fuck I'm talking about there?
So wait, I don't remember how he gets tricks Kenta, but I mean, I remember the Wolfie thing from T2. That's the Terminator was talking to the stepmom, and he says the wrong dog name, and the T-1000 agrees, and that's how they know it was dead. But I don't remember exactly what happens here with how he
so the Terminator does 2 tricks. He does one where the 2 brothers are separated. The little brother, you can't see, you don't know where he is, and he's calling out to Kenta, and then Kenta's like walking around, and he opens up a door. There's like a wall behind it because he's in the sort of
fun house.
Fun house. Yeah, but then like essentially the Terminator has brought him to him by pretending to be the brother, and then like the Terminator just bursts through a wall. But
yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, and then what happens is the Terminator calls out to the other siblings, and he's like, "Oh, I just had to go check upstairs." And then the daughter's like, "There is no upstairs." And then they're like, "That's not him. It's not the real him." So.
Yeah. That's right.
But I got freaked out, man. Like I thought that he like straight up killed him, but then when he like throws him over his shoulder, it's like okay, he's gonna take him as a hostage.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing is that he's trying to gain access to Malcolm and Kokoro, and he needs leverage to get around that EMP gun. So Kenta is his leverage.
Yeah, yeah, and there's this really cool visual moment too, right before that, where Kenta looks in one of the funhouse mirrors, and he actually looks like his father.
Yeah, he looked a lot older. Yeah, and maybe that's where I got the idea of potentially seeing these kids older and seeing what happens to them.
Yeah, yeah. So the episode ends basically. You know, there's this whole revolution that you were just talking about, where they've been rounding people up. They kill people if the people have weapons, but they let them live if they're defenseless. And then the Terminator's just basically driving through the city with Kenta on his shoulder, and he's going to the dad's tower.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, yeah. So let's do a little spoiler, Brian. You said that you saw Transformers 1 and you liked it.
I loved it. Yes, it was great.
Man.
I'm going to be bold. I'm going to be bold and say it is my second favorite Transformers movie now.
Of course, 1986, the Transformers the movie.
It just cannot be beaten. I can't imagine just, and I'm saying that from an extreme sense of nostalgia. It will not be topped, honestly.
Right.
For that.
No, yeah. I was watching it the other day. Like, it's just fucking on YouTube. You can just pull it up on YouTube. And I was just watching it the other day, and I actually wasn't even like watching it. I was just listening to it while I was delivering pizzas. And I was like, oh my God, this is so fucking good.
Nothing puts me in a better mood. Even considering that they murder half my favorite characters,
Yeah, very brutally too in some cases. Yeah. So I guess since I'm talking about Transformers, we're done with our Terminator discussion. There's a few things that are in the air too. There's Agatha All Along, right? That's the name of the fucking title.
One thing I wanted to tie into that actually is one of the things that Kokoro says that I never realized. She mentions the origins of the word robot. And it's like a Slavic word for slave. I did not know that. I almost feel bad saying that word now.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that like robot directly translates into slave. I think like just part of it, right? I think she says like rob, because I think that robot, the word itself, is just sort of a made up term. And I think it was used in like a play or like a really, really old movie from like the 1930s or something.
Yeah.
But that's very cool. Yeah, a little bit of history there. Agatha All Along is the name of the show, or no?
Yes, it changed so many times.
Yeah,
is it Agatha All Along? Is it Agatha Coven of Chaos? Is it
Darkhold Diaries? Yeah, there you go. Nice. Speaking of which, wow, I'm just doing a little side tangent, kind of like talking to you, and maybe our viewers be interested too. But did you see that there was an Avengers Assemble comic that came out this week?
No, I didn't get to go to the comic store this week yet.
Okay. So like Steve Orlando, who's kind of rising up in Marvel, he has a side Avengers title that's besides the Jed McKay Avengers title. And the team, when you look at the team, you're like, oh, well, Jesus Christ. Like, this is just like the MCU team. Like, because it's got like regular Steve Rogers Cap, but then it's got She-Hulk, Shang-Chi. Fuck. Now, I'm making this point and I can't even stand it. Shuri. It's got like all these like MCU people as the main characters.
Is it in the is it in 616, or is it like an extension of the Avengers Assemble cartoon?
No, it's 616.
Okay, interesting.
Now, I'm not just pulling this out of my ass and just saying random stuff. The reason why I'm saying this is because the Serpent Society, they're the bad guys in the first issue, which the Serpent Society are going to be the bad guys in Captain America New World Order. But then they worship a new serpent, the Red Serpent. And you know who the Red Serpent is?
It's got to be Red Skull. No?
Mephisto.
Oh!
Yeah. So I just was wondering if, like, because I find that a lot of Marvel comics now, it's like, oh, you're making this basically because this is going to reflect the movies now.
Yeah.
With
Agatha, I'm just going to call it that because I'm not 100% sure about the name.
Agatha something, yeah.
I didn't realize that Aubrey Plaza is in the show. I didn't know that, I don't think. And I like her, and I'm kind of curious to watch it. And I've already heard people trying to figure out who she really is. And of course, people were saying Mephisto,
Of course,
or the daughter of Mephisto, or somebody said Morgan Le Fay.
I've seen Morgan Le Fay.
There's another somebody's mom. I forget whose mom they said. Oh, Doom's mom. That's what they said.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
So I'm kind of curious to watch it. If we don't end reviewing it, that's totally fine. But I'm probably gonna watch it anyway.
Yeah, I think I might actually throw it on the TV right after I'm done talking to you.
Nice.
Yeah.
No, that's Monkeys first, and then Dark Fate.
There you go. Okay, so you just got about 7 hours of things to watch. Don't worry about your wife and kid, you know.
Who?
But that's how I would say Aubrey Plaza too. If I was to meet her, I'd be like Aubrey, because like
I have a cold. I'm getting over a cold, so it's like extra hard to pronounce things.
Yeah. Oh no, I understand. I had it last week. Yeah. No, I'm just like so attracted to her. I know it's like weird to say things like that on shows and stuff now, but I don't give a shit. I just think she's like, oh man. So
I think she's great. Everything I've seen her in, I like that she's kind of taken on more serious roles since starting from Parks and Rec and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's really good in this movie called Black Bear. She's really good in White Lotus. And I feel like we've gone so far on the tangents. We're like talking about Aubrey Plaza's career now. We're talking about like there you go. Okay. So then
which I didn't watch season 2 of.
Well, so then all right. We got it all kind of going back full circle, but we're gonna leave now and tell you guys thank you for watching. Subscribe if you have not yet, and we'll always take the likes and the comments too. So bring them on. Next week we'll have some Transformers reviews for Transformers 1, and then we'll also finish up our Terminator. All right. Hasta la vista, baby. We'll see you next time.